Hey there, Ranger. Feeling overwhelmed in the Ascendant arena? Don't worry, this video will break down everything you need to know in order to start dominating in the arena. Starting off with the 3 available game modes: Ranked, Casual, and Custom Matchmaking. In Rank, you will play against people similar in skill level to you, and your rank will be based on the results of the matches you play. In Casual Matchmaking, you will play against players without affecting your rank. So if you want to test out new teams or learn the ins and outs of PvP without affecting your rank, this is the perfect game mode for you. And finally, Custom. Custom lets you play against your friends or selected opponents using a custom match code. Your rank will also remain unaffected in this game mode. After you have selected what game mode you would like to play, feel free to start learning the game with the beginner teams that are already created for you. But if you would like to start crafting your own team, then there are some fundamentals that you need to know. To create your very first team, click on the Build a New Team option towards the bottom of your screen. This will take you over to the Teambuilder that is currently only available through the browser, and this is where you will craft and save your teams. Your team will consist of Illuvials, Augments, and weapons and armor for your Ranger. Illuvials are the creatures battling alongside your Ranger. They all have different abilities and what's called an Omega ability. This is a special ability that gets activated once its energy bar is filled. Illuvials also have what's called a hyper bonus, which are special bonuses they gain based on their dominant affinity when compared to their opponent. Their dominant class will also affect the hyper bonuses that they receive. Augments are essentially items that you will place on an Illuvial that will grant that Illuvial either an offensive or defensive stat, provide buffs to your team, or debuffs to the enemy team. Keep in mind, Augments can only be placed on Illuvials and not your Ranger. And finally, you have Mastery Points. Each Illuvial, Augment, weapon, and armor upgrade has Mastery Points associated with them. Keep this in mind when building your team. For example, the more expensive your team is to play, the more rounds you will need to survive in order to play them. Every Illuvial has affinities and classes, or composites of those. For example, if you have air plus air, you get the Tempest composite. Same with classes. If you have Scion plus Empath, you get the Enchanter composite. And when played together, they create Synergies. You will need 3, 5, and 7 units of the same class or affinity to activate Synergies. And then composites will need 2, 3, and 4 units, with the Rogue class being the only exception, needing 2, 4, and 6 units. And with every synergy threshold that you reach, your team will gain an even more powerful buff. Each Illuvial with a composite affinity and class will also have a dominant trait. Make sure you pay attention to the dominant trait when building your team, especially when considering which Illuvial you're going to want to bond your Ranger to. Bonding your Ranger to an Illuvial gains its primary affinity and class, and you can then equip a weapon to your Ranger to gain a composite affinity and class. In the Ascendant arena, you will begin the game by seeing an overview of your opponent's team. Then you will begin the first legendary augment bidding round, and here you have 30 seconds and 4 points to allocate towards either the augments you want for your team or to deny augments your enemy will want for their team, so choose wisely. Then the next phase begins. You will have 50 seconds and 100 mastery points to place the Illuvials, weapons, armor, or augments you want to start with. Both the time you have and the mastery points gradually increase as the rounds go on. These points are subject to change, but it's something to keep in mind when choosing what you want to play in the early rounds versus what you want to play in the later rounds. Keep in mind, activating Synergies makes your specific team comp much stronger. The sooner you can do so, the better. I know with everything on your screen, it can feel overwhelming at first, but stick with me, Ranger, and let's cover some of the key bits of information that will help you understand what's going on. At the very top, you have your Illuvatar, your HP, the enemy's HP, and the enemy's Illuvatar. The rounds or phase that you are on, the timer for that round or phase, and a ready up button if you are ready before the timer runs out. To the left, you can see your synergies and which ones are active based on what you have played so far. And to the right, you can see your opponents. If you select the middle option, you can then see the combat stats. And the third option will highlight and show you what hyper effects are active based on the affinities of the Illuvials on the board. There is also a graphic that you can look at that will show you what affinities gain hyper versus other affinities. Towards the bottom of your screen, you have your entire team. How many Illuvials have a maximum of 8 that you have on the board so far, your mastery points you can spend, and filter options at the very bottom. You can filter by Illuvials, augments, weapons, armor, mastery points, stages, or even by tier. And there is also an undo option on the left based on your last action, and a clear all filters option on the right. Now, after every round, selling and moving Illuvials once placed will cost you a percentage of their mastery points. So positioning is something to keep in mind when placing your Illuvials. However, your ranger will always be free to move and free to swap weapons and armor. A good basic strategy here is having a frontline and a backline. Frontline units will soak up the damage while your backline units dish out the damage. Be aware of rogue units though, they can jump to your backline and take out your carries, so make sure you protect them. Each player will start with 1000 HP, and if you win the round, you deal damage based on the total cost of the remaining mastery points on the board. This includes Illuvials, augments, weapons, and armor mastery points. And if you lose, you will take damage based on what your opponent has left on the board. There will be 3 of these rounds before the next legendary augment bidding round, and then more rounds after that until one drone's HP hits 0. And as a final note here, Ranger, something else that you need to know is that you can also move your drone around by pressing Control and then right-clicking on where you want to move your drone to. And not only that, but if you left-click your drone, it will bring up emotes that you can also use while you're in-game. You can taunt your enemies or even show them some love. And that's about it. These are the basic fundamentals that should help you on your way to winning games and dominating in the Ascendant arena. You got this, Ranger.